Okay, this is the Magic Red Lab. Well, before we get started on the Magic Red Lab, I wanted to introduce you to my two assistants today.
Hi, I'm Jack. Hi, I'm Parker.
And this is Jack and Parker. And so we're going to go through and do the Magic Red Lab for you so that you can get the results and you can fill out the laboratory paper. Before we do that, though, I wanted to go back in time when I was in college, because it relates in a little bit of a way to this Magic Red Lab. When I was in college, I was a waiter.
You were?
Yeah, yeah. So everyone, when you're in college, a lot of times you have to take a job, and my job was to be a waiter, and that's how I got money so that I could buy books and papers and all those things I needed. And Taco Bell and other things like pizza and stuff like that. Well, when I was in college, one of the memories I have of being a waiter was once I had these four, we'll call them gentlemen, even though they were probably anything but. And they were trying to be funny with me one night, and so a waiter comes over to a table, and normally what does a waiter have to do?
To start, he has to pour for the drink.
Yeah, he pours the drinks, takes your food order, right? So I came to give them each a drink. And so there was a group of four young gentlemen there, and the first one said, sir, would it be okay if I had a water? And so I took my pitcher and I poured him a nice big tall glass of water. Well, as I went to the second gentleman, I said, sir, would you also like a water? And he said, I was wondering, is that tap water or is that bottled water? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure I filled it up from the tap in the back, so I would think that's a tap water. And he said, even though it isn't kind of a bottle, he said, no. I would then rather take, how about Kool-Aid? And I said, Kool-Aid? Kool-Aid it is. And so I took my pitcher and I poured him a tall glass of Kool-Aid. Right? And so as I got ready for the third person, I said, sir, and the first person raised his hand and said, excuse me, sir, this water really doesn't taste so good. I think that second gentleman was right. I think the Kool-Aid would be a much better option. And so I took his water back. I said to the second person, I'm going to need that Kool-Aid. Hold on. And so I took his Kool-Aid, and then I poured them both a very tall glass of Kool-Aid. Now, as I was doing that, I approached the third gentleman, and I said, sir, would you also like a glass of this refreshing, very, very tasty and tempting Kool-Aid? And he said, you know what, sir, I would rather have a glass of water. And I said, sure. And so I poured him a tall glass of water. Well, as I moved to the fourth person, the first person's hand went up in the air, and he said, you know, sir, this Kool-Aid doesn't taste as sugary as I thought it would. Can I have some water? And I said, sure. And so I grabbed his Kool-Aid, I poured it back into the container. The second guy's hand went up. I said, sir, is there something I can help you with? He said, I would also like a tall glass of water. This Kool-Aid isn't that good. So I poured that back in. Third person, I said, hold on, I'm going to have to use this. Poured that inside. And then I poured them all a tall glass of water. Now, as I got to filling up their glasses, and so that it was all just water, fourth person raised his hand and he said, sir, and I said, yes, I get it. It's a nice glass of water for you. And he said, no. I said, well, then it must be a glass of Kool-Aid.
Wow.
And so as I poured him a glass of Kool-Aid, all the other three hands went up. I said, don't worry, you don't even need to tell me. I will take back your glass of water. I will take your back glasses of water. And I will take your glass of Kool-Aid, sir. And his hand went up and said, no, I understand. I know exactly what you want.
No way.
All of you would like a glass of Kool-Aid. And so I poured them all a nice glass of Kool-Aid. As I was doing that, the fourth person's hand was still in the air. And I said, sir, I will get to you in just a second with your Kool-Aid. And I filled it up. And I said, there it is, sir. Is there anything else I can get you? And he said, yes, a glass of milk. And so I quit. Well, this kind of leads me into the lab. And so my assistants, if you could walk back with me. In the back, I have the lab set up. Let's walk back to the lab. Here, as we walk back, you'll see that we have 4 cups, and they are labeled A, B, C, and D. You will notice all 4 of these cups are clear and colorless. Now, do you know what it means to be clear and colorless? Any idea?
There's no color.
Colorless means no color. I agree. Do you know what it means to be clear?
There's like nothing in there.
Yeah, so you can see through it. And so we have to differentiate between clear and colorless, where it has no color and you can see through it, whereas some things have a color and you can still see through it, and that makes them clear. So we have 4 of these. We also have, this is called a well plate, and each one of these wells, as you'll see here, is a little place for a chemical to go. And so my assistants are going to add each of these in combinations to come up with color changes. And so here's what we're going to do. I think if you get that pen, maybe we should get the pen. And we can start, and let's write down your first combination. What do you think we should mix?
I think we should mix A and B.
A and B. Okay, so let's write down A plus B. Just somewhere on your paper there. A plus B. Okay? And now what I want you to do is I want you to get your A, right? And you're going to add 2 drops of A. Okay, we're going to add that in the well. Okay, and you're also going to add 2 drops of B. Just 2 drops. Okay, 2 drops of B. 1, 2. Okay, now put that down. Now let's go up. Now let's grab our toothpick and let's mix them. And that's it. Let's step away for a second. And what do you see?
Clear.
Clear and?
No color.
And colorless. Perfect. So we did A and B. Well, now what's another combination that we can try?
A, B, and
Just of 2.
C and D.
Okay, so let's try. Let's write it down. C plus D. Okay, so if you can get C. Okay. Put 2 drops of C in a different well. Okay, and then let's get 2 drops of D. Now remember, these are all labeled so that we don't get them confused.
This is D.
Right, so 2 drops of D are going to go in here. Let's get that. 1, 2. Okay, now let's get another toothpick. Let's mix it. And do you see anything?
Clear as day.
Clear as can be. Okay, put that toothpick down. So we did A and B. How about another combination? What could that one be?
Just 2.
Just 2.
C and B.
C and B. Okay, let's write it down first,
Oh, yeah.
so we don't forget what we mixed. C plus B. Okay.
So let's get some C.
Okay, let's hear C.
So that's C. We'll put it in the top. 1, 2.
Okay, and then we're also going to add B to that, you said, right? 2 drops of B. You think you have 2 drops in there. Okay, can you mix those?
Yes.
Okay, now let's take a step away. So what we have seen so far, so A and B, C and D, C and B, they all mixed, and what colors did you see?
None.
Now this is called the Magic Red Lab. Have you seen any red yet like you saw in my demonstration?
No.
Okay, did we use all of the combinations?
No.
A was with B.
No.
Well, oh, can't we have another combination?
A,
And?
D.
A and D? We didn't do that. Okay, let's try A and D. Write it down. A plus D. Okay, so now we got all of our combinations. So do you have a well that you haven't used yet?
1, 2.
2 A's.
And then D.
Okay. That one. Nice. Is that what it looked like when we did our demonstration?
Yes.
Right, Parker? So we mixed that. Okay. So when we
And
look at
that's
our
what-
combinations that we did, A plus B was nothing.
No.
C plus D was nothing. C plus B was nothing. And A plus D was what gave a color change. Are there any ones we didn't mix yet?
We didn't
B
do
and C.
B. No,
Let's see.
no, we did B and C. B
We did
and
B and
D.
C.
B and D.
B and D. Let's try B and D and see what happens. Write it down. Write it
yeah.
down first so that we don't forget later. B plus D. Okay.
Okay. I got this one. So we'll put it right here.
Okay.
1, 2.
Okay.
B. And you got D? Thank you very much. You got it? 1, 2.
Okay.
Clear as day.
So no color. So A we mixed with B, C, and D. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
B, did we mix that with A, C, and D?
Yeah.
Yes. And then C we mixed with A, B, and D?
Yes. Wait. C and A.
We didn't add C and A. So why don't we try A and C? I don't think I saw that one as our combinations. We gotta write it down first.
C and A. C plus A.
Okay.
So it looks like we have 6 combinations.
So far, 6 combinations, which makes sense.
Do one right here. 1 drop, 2 drop.
Okay, and then A. Let's make sure let's not confuse our pipettes, or they'll start changing all kind of funky colors.
You got it, Parker. You got it. Okay. Right there. No, right there. No, right there. I'll help you. 1, 2.
Okay, so do we get any color changes there? Okay, so let me look at us here and let me tell you what the lab is. The purpose of the lab isn't to just see a color change, it's to figure out what all of these chemicals are. Now, when I do the pre-lab, the students will know that A, B, C, and D are some mixture of hydrochloric acid, phenolphthalein, sodium hydroxide, and water. Now, one of the things that we find is that hydrochloric acid is an acid. Sodium hydroxide is a base. Water, well, water is neutral, it's water. And phenolphthalein, can you say phenolphthalein?
Phenolphthalein.
Phenolphthalein, right? See, can you spell it? Phthalin. So phenolphthalein is actually something, it's a chemical, it's called an indicator. It changes, guess what color? Pink when it's mixed with a base. So the real challenge is for us to figure out, is A, phenolphthalein, is A, water, is it HCl, or is A our phenolphthalein or sodium hydroxide? So here's what I want us to do. I know that in this one over here, the one that turned pink, right? That was what ones? Do you remember what that was?
That was, I think it was, not that, it was A and D.
A and D. So you know what? Let's try it again in another well. Let's get A and D.
Okay, 2 drops there. And D. There you go. And put it in this one. This one. Yeah, so it does
You
turn
were right.
pink.
Okay, so it was A and D. Can you put a little dot by A and D over here so we know that's the ones that change the colors, right? So we know that a pink color comes from a mixture of a base, sodium hydroxide, and phenolphthalein. So some other things that we're going to try is we're going to try to make that color disappear. Do you know anything about acids and bases?
Not really.
Nothing? You learned anything about acids and bases? Nothing? I don't know if you did in school yet. So here's one of the things we find out about acids. Acids, we know that they don't change. So acids, when you put them with phenolphthalein, don't make a color at all. Bases, when you put them with phenolphthalein, make a color. Do you know anything that happens when you mix acids and bases?
It turns a different color.
Nope. Let me think. So acids and bases, they actually oh, let me think of this. Have you ever had heartburn?
Yes.
Yes. Heartburn comes from an acid. Now, did you ever have to drink anything to make it go away?
I drink water.
Water? Okay. Did you ever try milk?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does milk work?
Yeah.
Because milk is a base. Acids neutralize bases. So here's what I want you to do. I want to try to get that pink color to disappear. Pink colors will disappear whenever there is no more base left. So do you know how we could get rid of the base?
Maybe use the color. Maybe use C.
So what would have to make the base? What would you have to add to make a base go away? What would make a base go away?
Acid.
Acid. Okay. So let's do this. We know. So let's write down here. A plus D plus. Now, what do we want to add to that?
C.
C. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. To one of these, I want you to add C. And you know what? How about we add 5 or 6 drops of C? Okay, now stir it.
Okay, let me get my toothpick. And it went away.
Perfect. Okay.
So
Now,
A, D, and C.
A plus D plus C. So when A and D were mixed, you got a pink color. And when you added C to it, what did the color do?
Disappeared.
Disappeared. Right? So we know, as I said before, that something will neutralize the base. Do you know what that would be?
Acid.
The acid will neutralize the base and it will make it disappear. Okay. Now let's try that other one. And what we have? A plus D. So write this down. A plus D plus B. Now, I told you you had phenolphthalein and sodium hydroxide. Phenolphthalein causes the color change for a base. Sodium hydroxide is a base. So what two things had to be mixed? The base and the...
Phenolphthalein.
Yes, that will make the pink color. It'll go away when you add the
Acid.
hydrochloric acid. And the fourth thing is water. What should water do to it?
It should make it. It won't take a
Okay, so let's see what B does. If B has no effect on it at
How
all,
many drops?
just add as many as you like. Okay, now mix it. See what happens.
Get a toothpick. Let's try to mix it.
Okay,
It didn't really do anything. Not at all. actually.
nothing. Okay, so it had, what effect did it have?
None. It just
So at this point is where most students struggle. Because most students will say, oh, I know now what C is, and I know what B is. But is A the base, or is D the base? And that's a tricky one. So here's what we have to go back to. Think of this. Acids and the phenolphthalein have no color change. Bases will have a color change. Okay, so let me think about this. If I add, let me think, how could I figure this out? So let me think, how about if I add, can I add, do you know what the acid is, by the way?
The acid is C.
That's the one that made it go away. So let's think of this. If I add the acid C, put that in one of them.
We'll put it in this one.
Okay.
How many drops?
2 drops. Okay. And when you add it to the base, so now the base is going to be either A or D. So give me a choice. Let's think.
Let's think D. I think
How about, okay, D, you want to do D? So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's write this down separately. We're going to do, what did we just do? A plus D plus. Now let's put a little dot by that A plus D plus C. No, down a little, right there, because that's the one that the color went away. That's important. So now A plus D, here's what we're saying. If you said A is the acid, if D is the base, what would happen when you mix the two of them?
The D and the neutral.
Yeah, they'll cancel each other out. So let's try D. Let's add D to it. How many did you mix?
I mixed.
How many? 2. So add 2 drops. Did it change colors? Hold on. Not really, right?
Not really.
Good. That's because it shouldn't. Now mix it. Perfect.
It went away.
Okay. It went away. So A plus D, if it were acid and a base, it should be neutralized now. So now we're going to add A plus D plus, what did we say? What are we going to add to that?
C? No. With B.
Are you sure it was A plus D? I thought it was A plus C.
Yeah.
A plus C, not D.
Okay.
Let's scratch out that D. Do the whole thing. Let's do it over again. A plus C. That makes much more sense. Because remember, A plus D turns it pink.
Yeah.
So now what if we add D to it? Let's see what happens when we add D to that. Put 1 drop in and see what happens. Turn it. Turn it around. No. Just mix it. What do we got?
It made it pink.
Okay, well, how about another drop? Did it get more pink?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
1 more drop. Okay. So here's what we know. We added A plus C plus D, and what did it do? Turn pink. Okay. So plus D. Right on here, plus D. Over here. Plus D. And it turned back to pink. Okay. So now what do we want to do? Well, we got to try that D. So why don't we try D?
D.
2 drops of D.
2 drops of D. And which one?
An empty one.
Okay, with me. 2 drops of D.
2 drops of D. And 2 drops of C, which we still think is the acid, right?
2 drops of C.
Did they change colors? Good. Mix them very well. Okay, good. Now what I want you to do is, what didn't we add to this? So you didn't write it down.
Oh.
You added what?
A.
D,
D.
D plus
Plus.
C. Now plus, and we're going to add A to that.
Let's put C back.
So let's try A, see what happens.
Whoa.
That turned real pink.
Yeah.
Okay?
Real pink.
Real pink. You notice that other one was kind of really faint, the pink?
Yeah.
So let's think.
Let me mix it. That's like the most pink out of all of them, actually.
Right?
Yeah, it really is.
Isn't that cool?
Yes, wow.
So let's see.
It's amazing.
So why don't we think, so now we're at a pretty good point, because it looks like there was still base in there. Okay? Which means that maybe D and C weren't the acid and the base. So here's what I want you to do. We know that C is the acid. So here's what we think, do you have any idea what the base is?
I think that the base is A.
Okay, well, let's do this then. Why don't you add, if you think that, why don't you add 2 drops of A in a blank one? Right? Put it down. And now we know that the acid is C, right? So let's add 5 to 6 or 7 drops of it, because shouldn't the acid completely neutralize the base? So let's add way more than 2. Good. Mix it. Okay. Now what I want you to do is to add, what was the one we're missing now? We added, what ones were those? You didn't write them down.
It was A and C.
Okay, so it was A and C. Now what I want you to do is to take D and just add it 1 drop and let's see what happens. 1 drop of D.
1 drop of D. 1 drop of D.
And what happened?
It went
in and it went away.
Yeah.
Like it wants to turn pink, but it can't.
Yeah.
Let's add another one.
The same thing.
Keep adding. Now, doesn't it seem like the only thing that's happening now at some point, does it look like the pink is staying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pink is only going to stay when you have a lot of, do you remember what it was?
D.
What?
Base.
Base. So does it seem like what must be the base?
D.
Seems like it might be D, right? So let's look at everything that we wrote down here. So we have some things here, A plus B, C plus D, B plus D, C plus D, A plus D, and C plus A. We added A plus D, right? We got pink. When we added C, it went away. A plus D plus B had no result. We added A plus C plus D. Now, when we did that, it was like kind of real faint pink.
Yeah.
When we added D plus C plus A, it was still real dark pink.
Yeah.
So what we thought is, let's take A and C and mix them.
Okay.
We did that. That's what this is here. And then when we added A and C, it was no color, right?
Uh-huh.
And then whenever we added more of D, so it, plus D over here, plus D. The more D we added, the more pink it got. Didn't it go away at first?
Yeah. It went away. So I added 1 and it went away. I added 2 and it went away. But when I added a lot more,
Right.
it actually turned pink.
So it seems like as you were adding D, what was it doing to the acid?
It was trying to like neutralize it.
Neutralize it, right. So at some point there becomes more base. So if you had to take a guess, what did you think was the acid? What letter?
C.
Okay. What letter was the base?
D.
D. Well, what does the base? The base changes color when it's mixed with phenolphthalein. So which one did you think was the base?
I thought D was the base.
Okay, so if D was the base, phenolphthalein must turn it. That must be letter.
A. Yeah.
And then what are we left with? A, you told me what you thought it was. C, you told me what you thought it was. D, you told me what you thought it was.
B,
The fourth one is
Water.
which must be letter?
B.
Hopefully you agree. Maybe Jack's wrong. Parker, do you agree with Jack?
Yes.
Well, that's what I need you to do. I need you to look at the results of Jack and Parker, fill out your data table, and then submit it to me for our lab, Magic Red.